Hello and welcome to this bonus episode of Weight Loss 360 with Boots Online Doctor. This is the place where our experts get myth-busting and answer the questions that everyone wants to know. I'm Helen Thorne, I'm a comedian and author, and joined with me today is the wonderful Ruth Taylor, our in-house nutritionist and registered nurse with Boots Online Doctor. And she'll be taking us through fats and sugars and the often asked question, which should we ditch when we're trying to lose weight and why? It's a good question, isn't it, Ruth?
It's a really fab question. So I'm going to try and bust a few myths here. And we're going to start by perhaps thinking about each food independently and then thinking about really which one we should focus on eating and which one to perhaps eat a little less of. So let's start with sugar. Sugar is something that we've learnt to embrace, really. It was not really part of our diet until the last sort of post-war times, I think. Talking about the Second World War here. And so thinking about sugar, it's often now used as a sweetener in food, added to the drinks that we make at home and also manufactured drinks. There's a lot of recommendations now about how much sugar we should have. And when we're talking about this type of sugar, we're talking about the free sugar. What we mean by free sugar is the sugar that's actually physically added to a food or a drink, not the sugar that's part of a natural food source, because there's quite a big difference between the two and how they feature and work in our body. And the recommendation for adults is that we don't have more than 30 grams of those a day, which is around 7 teaspoons. Now that sounds like, to me, quite a lot, but it really depends on what your normal appetite for sugar is. So to put that into context, if we had 100 mils of orange juice, which was roughly half a glass, it would have just over 8 grams, which is just over a large teaspoon. And apple juice is worse. It's got 11 grams per 100 mils. So that's,
you would think that orange juice is more sweet because it's denser.
I know, I agree. I would have thought it was that way round. But I think if you think about when you eat the fruit, actually oranges generally are less sweet than apples. But obviously we also have changed our preference as a society. We're tending to go for those slightly sweeter apples now. So our taste buds are changing because we're eating so much more sugar. And if you think about milk chocolate, which was one of my favourites, being a nurse, you're bombarded with chocolate on the wards.
Yes, I bet.
All of the time. So something like a small bar of milk chocolate has got 6 teaspoons of sugar and 45 grams, which is pretty staggering, isn't it? I think that's
and you can eat it very, very quickly. It can disappear in a blink, I found. Yes.
It literally, it's gone. You almost inhale it, don't you?
Yes, exactly right.
And then all of that sugar's there in your system. And the big one for me, I think, also tomato ketchup, because that's something we see people adding onto their food in quite large quantities. But a tablespoon of tomato ketchup, which is probably one reasonable squirt from a bottle.
Yeah, that's what you'd have on your chips or on your hot dog or whatever.
Maybe you'd have 2 or 3 of those. So it's a teaspoon of sugar per squirt. So 1 tablespoon is a teaspoon of sugar. So we know sugar adds sweetness to our food, but really it's a source, I'm sorry to tell you this, guys, but it's a source of empty calories. And we know that the more sugar we have, the more we're going to have a greater risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, being overweight, and also just generally conditions which are associated with inflammation in our bodies.
So when we're talking about sugars, we're talking about, you can physically see a teaspoon of sugar, but what about alternative sugars? Because I think that was a big thing that we were fed to us about, the low-calorie drinks, the low-fat yogurts. So what is the difference?
I think that low-fat brigade, that started in the 80s, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Became really popular. And in fact, I think what we've seen is the more low-fat foods we eat, the bigger the problems with weight have become, because what is often happening is the manufacturers will add sugar when they take out the fat to bring some taste improvement. So you'll find that those foods that are naturally or that have been created as low-fat products are naturally higher in sugar or have been created to be higher in those added sugars. But thinking about the artificial sweeteners as well, they really need to come into this conversation because the news isn't great. We know that they can add sweetness, so they really sing to our palates, especially if we've got a bit of a sweet tooth. Some of the research has suggested that artificial sweeteners increase how much insulin we produce. And from all of the podcasts we've been talking about insulin and the importance of keeping that lower, we want to really be thinking, okay, so if artificial sweeteners are boosting the amount of insulin we're producing, they're not going to be that great for us. And we know that if we're increasing the amount of insulin we produce, then we're going to be at greater risk of that type 2 diabetes as well. Also, I think it's about our taste buds. Our taste buds respond to the foods that we eat. So if we're regularly giving ourselves something sweet to eat, then that's what our taste buds are going to get accustomed to. And we can retrain our taste buds as well. So we've probably gradually all become slightly sweeter in terms of our food preferences. And I often find that people are quite surprised that actually you can change. I don't know if you found this, Helen, but you can change your taste preferences. So where you may have had a really sweet tooth, you can change it to perhaps wanting to encourage less of those sweet foods.
Oh, yeah, I found that was a big change for me because I was very much a sweets person, especially because I'm on tour and I'll be doing a show late at night, and my go-to for energy was like jelly sweets, that sort of thing. So I would have an entire bag because I thought that's what I need for my energy. And what I had to do was to start doing swaps, basically. So either protein balls or nuts, even just a cup of tea, and having maybe a brown bread tuna sandwich. I needed the energy to go on stage, and I needed sustainable, so I needed protein and carbohydrates. But I would always have like licorice or any sort of immediate hit, because that's what I thought would give me the boost. But actually, I'd have a big spike and then a big dip.
Yeah, and so many people find that. So it's really helpful to be thinking, actually, sustainably wise, it just doesn't work, does it?
No, and also I had no self-control. I couldn't buy a bag of sweets and have one. And so actually just eliminating, or to say I don't have sweets on tour, that was great, because otherwise I would literally be shoveling handfuls. The hunger never ended.
And it's not you, it's about how they're manufactured. Don't forget. I think we beat ourselves up for being lacking in self-control, but don't forget, these products have been created so that you can really eat loads of them.
So I think we've talked about sugar. It's not so great. It's not so great. So let's go to fats. Now I want to talk about fats because I think, again, this has been a very recent thing that fats have actually got a better reputation. That was the bad thing. And now we're learning so much more about how good they can be for you.
Yeah, I think fats are the unsung hero, actually. They're just such an important component of our diet. And we have many people who are really scared of eating foods that have got fat in because they think they're going to gain weight, which is not strictly true. They're really important. They are part of a healthy diet and serve many important functions in the body. However, I guess not all fats are created equal. So I'm going to try and simplify this a little bit. So when you think about eating fats, think about following the Mediterranean style of eating. So things like eating oily fish, olives, olive oil, avocados, nuts, seeds, flax seeds and chia seeds. Those are fantastic. Sometimes when I talk to people about Mediterranean style of eating, they often think that means they can eat large amounts of pasta. And
yes,
actually,
my brain did go straight to lasagna, but
did
yes.
It? Yeah. It's really interesting.
Garlic bread,
isn't
yes,
it?
please. Yes.
So we've got a really helpful downloadable sheet that you can download from the Boots Online Doctor website about a Mediterranean diet. So if that's interesting for you, please do download that. But we know that type of foods, those Mediterranean healthy fats, can really help to lower our sort of less healthy cholesterol and also reduce the risk of heart disease. And we also know that our brain really needs fats. So I think it's something like 70% of our brain is composed of fat. If we don't get fat from our diet, then our brain is going to be really struggling. So we need fats for brain function and also for cell health. So the cells in our body need to be sending messages through our body all day long. So if we have nice healthy fats in our body and that they're part of the cell wall, we can get those messages in and out of those cells really easily. So that they have a fantastic role. They also can help to reduce, we talk a little bit about inflammation. Inflammation is a really important factor in terms of disease, really. So from inflammatory conditions, things like our metabolic health problems, like our cardiovascular heart disease and our type 2 diabetes are all caught up with inflammation. And then you may other conditions such as arthritis are very inflammatory conditions as well. Healthy fats, the ones we've just talked about, can really help to reduce inflammation for many people and reduce that chronic disease risk. But also one of the things we haven't mentioned is that we have certain vitamins that we need for our health. Those are our fat-soluble vitamins. So the vitamins A, vitamin D, vitamin E and vitamin K. And actually when we have fats in our diet, we will be able to absorb those. But then we need to think about other fats. So some of the fats that we have around us are less healthy. And I think the ones that we really need to avoid and perhaps are being gradually reduced in our diets because manufacturing processes are changing are those trans fats. Trans fats are the fats that are created when foods are cooked at very high temperature. So things like fried foods and cookies and donuts and cakes, unfortunately, that have been cooked at quite high temperature will naturally be higher in these trans fats. And that basically means the chemical structure of the fat has been changed through the cooking process, and they're really not so healthy for us. So we want to be thinking about reducing those. We know that those trans fats and some of the sort of an excessive intake of saturated fats from the red meats can be problematic if we eat too many of them. We don't have to get rid of them altogether, but just keep them to the smaller proportion of your diet. And we know that that can raise the less healthy cholesterol. There's an increased risk of heart disease, and again, inflammatory conditions can increase if we have too many of those less healthy fats.
So I was going to say, yeah, don't go grabbing a hunk of butter and a big bit of fat off a steak. Like, you've got to think, it's almost like the salad. You want the salad bar fats. Think of something that you would eat healthily rather than something you get late at night, like the late night fats.
A little bit of butter is apparently okay now.
Yeah.
A little bit of red meat is okay. It's the proportion across the day or across the week. Just thinking about getting the balance as much as you can towards those more healthy fats.
Yeah, and I think fat is such a loaded word because when we think, oh, if it's low fat, I'm not going to get fat. And I think that's the misconception we were fed in the 80s that we have to unpick. Not all fats are bad.
Yeah, and also fats, if we eat fats, we don't have such an insulin response. So adding a little bit of fat into each meal can be really helpful. Yeah.
So Ruth, if people are starting to introduce fat into their diet or just interested in how much they can eat, can you give them advice about how much and when and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's think about those healthy fats. Things like oily fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines. We would want to be thinking about eating those 2 or 3 times a week, ideally. And in terms of quantity, probably something like a palm-sized portion of fish would be really great. That's a very simple way of looking at it. If it's something that you don't enjoy, then just try and have it once a week and just change your taste buds. Just be kind to yourself and introduce it slowly, or just mix it up with something that's got a stronger flavour like some herbs or some spices to just get yourself used to it in an easy way. If you're thinking about nuts, then there's a clear recommendation that we should try and include a small amount of those as often as possible, so maybe every day, but just like a small handful. And seeds, similarly, we could have some of those every day sprinkled on top of our breakfast or our lunches or even our dinner. So a couple of tablespoons of seeds, so things like chia seeds, flax seeds, pumpkin, and sunflower seeds. They all count. So the healthy fats come from those chia and the flax seeds more specifically. And then olive oil is great. You want to be looking at this better quality. If you're going to have it raw, is really worth, or uncooked, then you want to be thinking about something that's cold pressed because it's gone through less chemical restructuring in the process of getting it into a bottle. But also think about maybe a tablespoon every day, or a thumb size tip of a thumb is a really good way of just thinking about quantities.
Now, Ruth, can I ask you about one of my favourite fats as an Australian? What about the wonderful avocado? How much avocado can I eat in a day? What would you recommend?
Yeah, we nutritionists, we love avocado, 100%. Really high in calories. Bizarrely, some studies have suggested it can actually help with weight loss, but it's a fantastically healthy food to be eating. So I think you can have half to a whole avocado as many days of the week as you can find a really nice ripe one.
Yes, that's the horrible thing. It's either too hard or then if it's turned, you're gone. It's gone.
Horrible.
It's a sad thing. So Ruth, now we'll have to go back to the initial question at the beginning of the podcast. Which one should we ditch, fats or sugars? I feel like we've already answered this, but let's go.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yep.
From everything
There's a clear
we've said,
winner here.
There's a clear winner. Fats play a vital role in our health. They're a great source of energy. They enable absorption of fat-soluble vitamins, and they're really essential for our overall health, for creation of hormones, and can be anti-inflammatory. So you can see this, they're absolutely a clear winner. Sugar in a processed form doesn't really offer very many health benefits apart from being an instant source of energy. So it does have a role, but very limited. So let's go for moderation with the sugar. Switch to foods which are low glycemic sources of sugar like berries and fruit, and get, just adjust your taste palette.
That's it. You don't need to have a whole packet of sweets to have a nice little hit.
You really don't.
That's it. Grab yourself some dates, maybe. Nature's sweets.
Yeah, good plan.
Weight Loss 360 is a fresh air production with Boots Online Doctor. The producer is Ollie Seymour. Next week, we'll be joined by Dr. Andrew Verma, clinical lead for the Boots Online Doctor weight loss service, to look at just how important a healthy weight is for your overall health and well-being. Thanks for listening. We're here to help you on your weight loss journey, so remember to follow Weight Loss 360 wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check out Boots Online Doctor weight loss service for a whole load of other amazing advice and free resources, including a weekly live webinar where our experts can answer your questions. The information shared here is evidence-based to help you achieve and maintain weight loss. However, if you have any health concerns or questions, please consult your GP before making any changes to your diet or lifestyle. Remember, every small change is a big step towards a healthier, happier you.